Welcome to the League Bound podcast, where we discuss upcoming draft prospects and the rising stars of the NBA. I'm your co-host Brandon, and I'm here with my guys Jake and Cameron. And today's a special episode because we're doing a post-combine mock draft. How are y'all feeling today?
I'm feeling good. This mock draft should be fun. It's one of the first ones that we're doing for this class, so I'm excited to see what it's like.
Yeah, I'm excited. I feel like the draft lottery was really crazy, and it'll be fun to get to go through one with the official order.
Yeah, we're getting closer to the NCAA early entry withdrawal deadline, so just so you guys know, I'm sure some of you saw, but there were some key withdrawals today, including Alex Condon and Yaxel Lindenborg, and I believe also Milos Uzan and somebody else withdrew yesterday. It's slipping my mind. I believe it was Carter Knox, but I know Condon and Lindenberg, they were a few guys who were expected to potentially go in the first round, but obviously they're not in the draft anymore. So that's something just to keep in mind as we get into this mock draft. But just to kind of explain how it's going to work, it's going to be, if you saw our mock draft that we did last year, I believe it was kind of a snake format, and it'll be pretty similar. With the first pick, we'll have Cameron, and then it'll go Jake, and then me. I'll be picking for the Sixers, and then it's just going to snake from there on. But Cameron, your time is on the clock. You will be picking for the Dallas Mavericks with the first pick.
Yeah, I feel like I have a pretty easy job here. I think we all know who is most likely going first. So with the first pick, I'll be taking Danny Wolf. Nah, I'm playing. Nah, I'm playing. Nah, I'll be going with Cooper Flag. He had a outstanding freshman year. He developed like at a really rapid pace, and he kept like iterating, kept getting better and better as the year went on. We've seen the Mavericks do some pretty crazy things over the last year, but I think this one is too obvious for Nico to mess up if there is a such thing. So I think they're locked in with Cooper Flag at the number one pick.
Yeah, without a doubt, this is the best player in the draft. I will be interested to see. I know he said that I think he is going to try to keep the pick right now, but obviously things can change, and sometimes GMs say things they don't really mean. It's hard for me to imagine, though, that people in the front office are up kind of in his circle would allow him to trade the pick, but for the sake of the Dallas fans, I just hope that they do indeed get Cooper Flag.
Yeah, I don't think he would be allowed back in the Dallas area if he traded the pick. Like I don't. It wouldn't be really. It would not be good for him to trade this pick.
I saw a quote. I was reading an article from, I think it was The Athletic, and I believe it was Sam Vecini. He was talking to, he did like one of the things where they talked to an anonymous NBA executive, and they were like, the rational move would obviously be to draft Cooper Flag, but I don't think we have a rational actor here. That was something I thought was funny because that was coming straight from an executive, allegedly. But now we are moving on to the second pick with the San Antonio Spurs. Jake, what are you doing here?
Yeah, so this one is kind of an interesting one. There are going to be some people who think the draft really starts at pick 2, depending on if the Spurs want to keep this pick or try to move it. Obviously, the rumor of like a Giannis Antetokounmpo or a Kevin Durant trade is up in the air. But I think in this scenario for this mock draft, we are going to stick and pick, and we're going to take Dylan Harper from the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. I know people are going to question how Fox and Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper can work out, but I think at this point, the Spurs are just going to acquire as much talent as possible and figure it out from there. Maybe it's a mid-season move where maybe Dylan Harper is really struggling his rookie year. Maybe his shot doesn't come along, and so maybe he isn't as far developed as we think, or maybe Harper comes in and looks amazing and he can play alongside Fox really well or alongside Stephon Castle. And maybe at the midseason trade deadline, there's somebody that they're looking to move to add another piece. That's why I feel like they should stick and pick and make the decision a little bit later.
Yeah, I just think here you just kind of take the best value here. Like I just think Harper is like at least amongst other teams, he's valued as like probably the second best prospect in the class. So I just feel like that's probably the best move for San Antonio.
Yeah, especially when you consider the fact that to many scouts and executives, for the first two picks, they consider those guys to kind of be on a each on tiers of their own, and then after that is kind of like a clear drop off. And I I don't think the Spurs should necessarily be. I mean, they have two good players ahead of them, but I don't think they should be married to the idea of, oh, we can't add another guard in that mix. Especially when it just seems like Harper is going to hit for sure. Obviously, he hasn't played a game yet in the NBA, but he's just one of those guys who has that kind of outlook. So I think that's the right decision. But now I will be taking the third pick with the Philadelphia 76ers, and I know here's where it starts to get really dicey. I've seen a lot of people who recently are mocking Edgecombe to go to Philadelphia, and I have become higher on Edgecombe in, I guess, the recent months in the draft cycle. But with that being said, I still think I'm going to go with Ace Bailey here. I know that he's a polarizing player, but I feel like with the skill set that he has and the confidence, just kind of listening to some of his, I guess, combine draft interviews, I feel like he's a guy who I'd be comfortable with the Sixers taking here. And sure, there's a lot of questions about him, but I feel like with so much talent around him, he can come in and easily be a contributing player, even if, the handle and the shot creation doesn't fully pan out. So I think here I'm going to stick with Ace Bailey.
So as a Sixers fan, do you feel like this is kind of you wanting them to take like a big swing here, just because the odds are they won't be picking anywhere near this area again anytime soon? So do you just want them to like take the biggest swing, or do you think just like who do you have higher on your board? I guess is my question.
I think for me, I do have Bailey higher on my board just because one, like, I know there's a lot of, like I said before, I know there's a lot of controversy around him, but I think if he does start to tighten up his handle, if he does improve his shot selection, things like that, I do think that he can be a really, really good player. I'm not sure that he'd be I guess, 1A type of player. I mean, that's always a possibility, but I still see him as like a really good secondary or tertiary option if things with him connect. And we have got Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain. Like, I think just having a solid group of young guys with high ceilings is something that's very appealing as a fan, but also just kind of looking at this from an objective standpoint. I feel like Bailey has really good defensive tools, and adding that to the front court with a player who can be a sharpshooter, I feel like it makes Bailey a really attractive prospect, in my opinion, compared to a guy like Edgecombe. Not saying that, I wouldn't want to take him there, but I feel like a guy who's 6'7", can shoot, has real defensive chops, 3-and-D. I feel like that's easily kind of, what's the word? Translatable.
Translatable.
I think the part where it just gets hard to project him is just in terms of his ceiling and his shot selection. But to me, I feel like those are things that can be fixed.
I feel like also with the 76ers, specifically in this spot, they can be a really good spot for Ace Bailey, because you mentioned like with Tyrese and Jared McCain, you kind of for the future already have your two main like ball handlers and playmakers on your roster. You wouldn't necessarily be drafting Ace Bailey to be like the primary initiator. You're comfortable with him being a Jaden McDaniels offensive option that's like going to hopefully provide good defense. We've seen in the playoffs how Jaden McDaniels can go get you 20 points without even really being the guy that's like running the whole offense at the top of the arc. So it's still a very valuable pick.
Yeah, I think it's a dream scenario for Ace Bailey just because like he'll get to develop in like around other really really good players, and he won't have that much responsibility on him at first. Like you guys said, there's Tyrese Maxey, there's Jared McCain, Paul George, Joel Embiid are still there, so it's not like they'll need him to come in and contribute right away. So it'll give him time to put on muscle and adjust to the NBA game. And I think like for whoever's taking Ace Bailey, ideal outcome is if he can provide to some of what Michael Porter does on offense and some of what McDaniels does on defense. Like, no, I don't necessarily project him to be anywhere near the defender as McDaniels is, just because he's probably one of the best on-ball defenders in the league. But if Ace can just steadily improve on that end and just get sharper off ball, he has the tools to one day be a really impactful defender on that end. So I think the 76ers is probably the best spot for him, but I have seen a couple people, if you guys do go Edgecombe, that he may drop a little down the board.
For sure. I've seen that too. I think, well, just looking at the team that comes after, and then I'll translate into the next pick after this. The Hornets, I feel like you kind of want something different from what they have. And they already have Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball. I know there's been talks about potentially moving him, but I feel like you kind of need a guy who's, I know Bailey has has defensive upside, but a guy like Edgecombe I feel like is just a better fit, simply because, one, I think that's kind of what they need. A guy who can come in, just play defense. He's athletic. And I feel like they kind of just need more of a defensive mentality. And for Edgecombe, I feel like that's just the better spot for him. And Bailey, I think he should go somewhere like Utah if he doesn't go to maybe the 76ers, simply because, one, they're a situation where they're just kind of looking for anything to click. And I feel like for Bailey, he's a guy who, we obviously talked about his high upside, and I feel like there they have a plethora of young talent that isn't really solidified, I guess. And I feel like that could present some challenges for him, but I still feel like he would have the reins to grow and maybe have a better shot at reaching his ceiling, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But with that being, Cameron?
I was just saying that I would kind of be worried about him going to Utah, just because I think, like, if you put him in a situation where he's, like, probably a top 3 player on that team when he comes into it, I don't know if he's quite ready to have that type of responsibility on his hands. Just, like, if I was his representation, I think it's better for him to be a role player first, but if he can, like, if his offensive struggles were more on Rutgers than it was on him, then that could be a place where he could thrive.
Okay, moving along. Yeah, moving along here, I have the Hornets pick. And I think I'm going to just rock with Edgecombe here. Like I said, just making sure there wasn't anybody else. But I think for the Hornets, they're in a spot where, one, I feel like that core, they just haven't played a lot of games together, so it's kind of hard to really get a gauge of what their talent's going to be or what their ceiling is going to be as a group. But I feel like Edgecombe is a player who can come in and, like I said before, defend. He has shown some potential as a off-ball shooter, and I think that's important. Where if they do keep LaMelo, like, obviously he's a ball-dominant player. The system's going to run through him. And Edgecombe is a fast player, gets out in transition. He can also finish through contact in the half court. And I think of all the players that are on the board, I'm really high on Edgecombe as just in terms of his mindset and his mentality, the way that he plays, the way that he gets after it. And I feel like Charlotte kind of needs a player like him right now.
Yeah, he's definitely like a really good defensive player. I think we've seen in this playoffs that's really important. Like, you need guys who can really guard and aren't liabilities out there on the court. So the Hornets, they could definitely use somebody to shore up their defense a little bit. I think Edgecombe can provide that and provide, like, a really dynamic, like, transition partner for guys like LaMelo. So I think he's probably the ideal fit for Charlotte there.
All right. Now with the 5th pick, Jake, you're up. You'll be picking for the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, the Jazz are in an interesting spot because when we reacted to the lottery, they were one of the teams we said was one of the biggest losers of falling from that top spot down to 5, and also with the Wizards one beneath them, which we'll hear about in a second. But for Utah, I think there's still a lot of valuable talent on the board. There's some guards like Jeremiah Fears, Trey Johnson, even a guy like Con Knipple, I feel like might be seen by a team as a valuable piece because of his shooting ability. But for me, at number 5, I think Trey Johnson for the Utah Jazz provides maybe the biggest upside among those top kind of guard scoring focused players. And they have quite a few of those on the roster, I know, like Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton. They've obviously got already the other young guards in Keontae George and Isaiah Collier. But with Trey Johnson being almost 6'6", I don't think you're drafting him to take any of like Collier or Keontae George's minutes. I think he could almost play kind of a 2-3 type of role for the Jazz. So Trey Johnson, with his upside and his shot making ability, I feel like at number 5 in this draft provides the best option for Utah.
Yeah, I think he's like the perfect mix of upside swing and somebody who I know will come in and contribute to an NBA team just because he's like legit one of the best shooters in the class. And I think he's just overall a really good player. I've really the more I've gone back and watched him, the more I've liked him. So he's moved up to like 4 on my big board, and like kind of him and Edgecombe to me is they're really different players, but it's a conversation that I've been revisiting a lot lately.
Yeah, I think Trey Johnson is a guy who, there's been a lot of talk with him about his shot selection as well. Some of that I think could also just be the system that he played in. I mean, he still averaged 20 points in the SEC as a freshman. I think, again, I don't know if he'll necessarily be that number 1 option in the future, but like Cameron said, I think he's a guy who has the skill set to come in and contribute right away, knockdown shooter, gets to his shots. I know a lot of people are kind of they're not as high on maybe his playmaking and his vision, but to me personally, I feel like he's a guy who can make the right reads when he needs to. And I think, Utah, that's a good spot for Trey to, maybe even try to see or maybe push the limits of what his ceiling could be. Because like he said, they just need a young guy who can steer them in a better direction than what they've been in. All right. And with the next pick, we have the Washington Wizards. Cameron, what will you be doing for them?
So the Wizards were the other team that we kind of all unanimously said were like losers of the lottery. Like this is one of the worst spots they could have fell to. However, I do think that it might end up working out for him in the end, just because I wouldn't have thought of this fit early in the year, but the more I've thought about it, I think Derek Queen is kind of the perfect fit alongside this current Wizards roster. They have a lot of athletic wings. They have the foundation of a really good defense, and he just might be like the missing piece to kind of gel their offense together. So I think Derek Queen to pair along Alex Shaw and the rest of the young core, I think it's a really good like it's a really good consolation for where they fell in the lottery.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best fit for him, honestly. And I know we did another mock draft that never got uploaded, but if I remember correctly, I do remember us kind of having the discussion of Queen is like, he's a really talented player, but just because of his style, it's like, it's hard to kind of project a fit for him. But as Cameron said, I feel like the way the team is built, that's kind of the best spot for him. And he also kind of provides something that, they don't really have, but could be dangerous. I feel like if he does hit in the way that he's supposed to. So Washington, I feel like, is a really good spot for DQ.
Cam, do you see Derek Queen playing more of the 5 and then moving Sar to the 4, or are you flip flopping that in the future?
Yeah, I think it'll be more of Queen as the 5 and him as the 4. But it'll kind of just be like an offense defense thing. So it's like I think you'll have Queen guard like the bigger body 5s and like the more bruising punishing players, and then you'll have like Sar play like the Anthony Davis or the Chet Holmgren or Evan Mobley type roamer role where he can come over and help on the back end. And then I think like it just gives you a lot of versatility because one, I think they're both big men who are solid passers. I think Queen is a lot more skilled to get into his own shot, but Sar can also is like he hasn't shot it great yet, but he's shown flashes of being able to shoot and step out. So if he ever develops that, I think it could actually be the perfect fit. So it's like to me, it would kind of be similar to something the Houston Rockets do with like Jabari and Şengün. So it's just something that I think they're both players are versatile enough to make it work, and I think they can kind of take on the responsibilities that they're both ready for at the moment of the 4 and 5 position.
All right, leading into the next pick, Cameron, you're also up for this. You would have New Orleans Pelicans at number 7.
See, this is a tough one just because I really don't know what direction they're going in as an organization. Like, I don't know if Zion will be on this team by the time the draft rolls around. I don't know if CJ McCollum will be on this team. This Pelicans are in like a really rough spot as an organization overall. But as it stands, it's okay. So I'm going through this here, and it. I'll ask you guys first before I make my pick. What do you guys think are the Pelicans' biggest needs?
You said their biggest needs? Well, I feel like they just traded Brandon Ingram. DeJounte Murray has a torn Achilles. I don't know when he's projected to be back, but I feel like right now you kind of need more of a table set, not necessarily a table setter, but kind of another, I guess, guy who could potentially be a lead guard, not a lead, or somebody who could just kind of be a ball handler, essentially. PG, maybe get you into your stuff, can go and get a bucket himself. I mean, like you said, it's also kind of hard to project when you just don't know what the outlook is going to look like. I mean, you have CJ McCollum, but I don't know. I feel like you kind of want another point guard who could maybe hit and be something long term because, like you said, McCollum, I feel like he's going to be gone just because of the contract he has. And if you do keep Zion, I feel like it's important to have kind of a solid guard in your backcourt to kind of help stabilize things.
So for me, early in the year, this would have been Casper's. Like I really like Casper's early in the year, but his struggles kind of concern me down the stretch. I think this is ultimately too high for any of the league guards. Like I agree with you. I think that like if there was a really good league guard prospect in this class that I just was in love with, I think this is where I would take him. I think the closer to that is Fears. I just don't know if I would take Fears with 7. Ultimately, I think I'm going to go with Con Knipple. I just think that he kind of does a lot of stuff right. And no matter what the roster ends up looking like whether they trade for a younger guard or if DeJounte comes back or if they end up going back to like the point Zion stuff that they've done, if they end up keeping him, I think Khan can kind of fit around it all. He shoots the ball really well. He can get his own bucket when he needs to. So I just think to play it safe, I think I'm going to go Khan. I think he fits kind of wherever you put him. And this is a team that like they have defensive players, so he's not going to hurt the defense that much. And I think he competes on that end anyway. So I think Khan's where I'm going to go.
All right, so next up we have the Brooklyn Nets with the 8th pick. And Jake, that is your spot. How are you feeling? I know the Nets have a lot of picks in this first round, so
yeah, they got plenty of picks to work with. I think probably at the top of this draft for them at 8. This is probably where they're going to look to take maybe the biggest potential reach. I think later on in this first round would be more of where you're looking for a little bit more finished products because obviously the Nets didn't have a great season, so they need to add potential boom type prospects while also adding quality role players that are going to come in and provide some good minutes. So at number 8, I'm thinking Jeremiah Fears has fallen far enough, and we're going to give him a shot. He's going to play alongside Cam Thomas, maybe get a chance at learning under D'Angelo Russell for a little bit, who's had some decent seasons in his career. So I think Jeremiah Fears is a good pick right here.
So we haven't like officially done our big boards yet, but Fears has been like a polarizing prospect among people. Like some people really love him and have him like in top three of their favorite prospects in this class, and some people just don't think he's necessarily quite ready to contribute at the NBA level. Where do you guys like? What range do you guys have Fears in?
I think he's probably around this 6 to 10 range. So him falling to a team like Brooklyn, I don't necessarily expect that to happen on draft night, but just based on the big board, I think that this is a very good range for him. I'm not sure about top 4 or even top 5. I think there are some other guys that I personally like better. But for Brooklyn specifically here at the end of the top 10, I think is a good spot.
See, I don't particularly mind this pick to the Brooklyn Nets just because I feel like they're kind of in a position where it's like they're going to come out and compete every night, but I feel like you can kind of take a swing here. And Fears, obviously, like I know I haven't given my thoughts on him yet. I think kind of coming into this season, I felt like, or coming into this mock, or not to this mock, but coming into this draft cycle, I felt like obviously he was a guy who wasn't really known yet, and it's kind of hard to get a gauge of a person who kind of just shoots up out of nowhere. But I feel like he's shown enough, like just in terms of playing in the SEC, being the, I guess, lead guard for not a very good Oklahoma team, having to make decisions, come out and play. And like it didn't always look pretty. But I think the best way to develop is just by playing in the NBA. And I think at the next level, this is what's best for him in his game and like just getting somewhere where he can play. And I could see that potentially being a spot for Brooklyn where their season's going to be over, you know, by February more than likely. And it's like he's going to be able to go out there, get more reps. So I think for Brooklyn, this is a good spot for Jeremiah Fears.
Yeah, Brooklyn's a team that they know going into next year, at an absolute best, they're probably competing for a play-in spot, maybe getting into that 9, as maybe even as high as 8, just because of how wide open the Eastern Conference is going to be. But there's so much good talent in the next coming draft classes where I feel like taking a swing here and seeing if he develops while also potentially building for 26 and then obviously 27.
All right, pick 9. I have the Toronto Raptors. I feel like I know what I'm going to do here, but I do want to ask y'all a question before I make this pick. What are your guys' feeling on Come On Malawach?
Since digging a little bit more, not to just his tape on the court, but more of his story of where he's come from and developed, Kaman Malawach is becoming one of my favorite prospects in this draft. I think some of his offensive abilities were kind of shadowed at Duke. I think they used him mostly as just like a rim attacking big and a defensive interior force. I think we've seen in some of the pre-draft workouts, his ball handling is maybe a little bit better than we saw. And also his jump shot form is not broken by any means. I think that's something that he can take out to the mid-range, maybe step out for 1 or 2 threes a game. So I think in the proper development system, which Toronto has done pretty well over the past few years, if you do end up taking Kaman Malawach here, I think he's going to be one of the best, almost seen as a steal, even though it's at the top 10 pick.
Yeah, I would say a while like towards the beginning of the cycle, I had him as like a really low floor prospect. I say for me that's changed at least. Like I could see like a floor now that's kind of low, but I think there's also like an obvious upside to him. Like if he gets some of his like, to me, how good he'll be will be based on like the big man things. Can he do the quintessential things that every big man has to do to be good in the league? Like can he catch the ball? Like consistently catch the ball? Will he hold up on the rebounding front? And to me, like I think that's like a toss up, kind of weird which way that goes in his career at the moment. I'm really concerned about his hands, but like so for me that would stop me from taking him like any higher than this. I think 9 is where I would like start considering it, just because the Raptors kind of have a need at center. But as a prospect overall, I think he's someone that like is a really high variance prospect. Like he could turn out to be like one of the best players in his class if he catches the ball, puts on some weight, and the jump shot is real. I think he'll be one of the best players in the class. If a couple of those things don't go the right way, I think you could be looking at another like James Wiseman, another one of those bigs that just had all the potential, but just was never able to quite put it together.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of iffy about what I want to do here, just because I do have some concerns, but I feel like he's also he's had moments where he's shown like what he can be, and I feel like the one thing they always talked about whenever they would play is he played with the South Sudanese team for the Olympics, and he hasn't played that many years of basketball, and I feel like they always say that with big men, but I think for him it's like he's 7'2", kind of an athletic guy, but he is also very, very raw. But I think I'm just gonna try to look past all those things and like see him for like what he can be, and I feel like also the Raptors, that just seems like a pick that they would make here, so I think I'm gonna just stick to my gut and go Malawach here. And plus, there's also not many other centers in this draft who really could kind of fit with that Toronto identity. Maybe they just don't even go center because of those reasons, but I think that's what I'm going to do here. All right, next pick, I have Houston Rockets.
The team that needs nothing.
And I think here, it's tough because I think Carter Bryant was definitely a guy who rose up late, and like I still kind of am unsure of like where. I know scouts are obviously high on him because he's staying in the draft. I'm not sure like if he's late lottery top 10 guy, like if that's where he's going to end up, but I think I'm going to go ahead and take the shot. I mean, Houston, I feel like of all the guys that are kind of up here and kind of in this range, I feel like Carter Bryant could definitely be a pick here just because he shot the ball decently. And obviously they kind of need 3-point shooting, but more than that, I feel like he could easily come in and fit in with Houston's identity. I'm still not sure about how the playing time would work just because they have, I feel like, a lot of wings and forwards, but I feel like he's kind of, yeah, I think Houston could be a nice spot for Carter Bryant. I mean, 3-and-D guy. I'll just keep it at that.
Yeah, I think he's kind of like a perfect fit for what they do. Like Ime, I think like as a Rockets GM, like I wouldn't even consider a player that doesn't play defense with just knowing Ime's not going to play him. Like he just does not play guys who can't guard. I think Brian is like a really effective defender. He mucks things up. He gets in passing lanes. Like he's someone that I could see turning into like a really, really good defender. Plus, he has kind of the perfect frame for it. Like he's good height for his position. He has like an almost NBA ready body already at his age. So he's someone I'm a really big fan of. And I think if he can like tap into a little bit of like more of his offensive game, which I think he just wasn't able to really show at Arizona a lot just because of the talent they had in front of him, and for some reason they didn't play him as much as they should. But I think he's someone that could end up being one of the best players in the class if he goes to the right situation. I think Houston is a really good situation just because I can see consolidation in their future with all the wings they have on the roster.
Yeah, this pick really, really frustrates me, Brandon, because as I'm sitting here trying to figure out who I wanted to draft for the Portland Trailblazers at 11, that was a pick that I was going to run to the board to take Carter Bryant. He would have fit, I mean, just perfectly at that 3 on that wing here in Portland. But yeah, I think Carter Bryant, like Cam said, he's got a lot of potential, and on that Houston team, you could really see him slotting in kind of right in that 7, 8, 9th man role for for Houston.
Yeah, I think. All right, so hear me out. I really like Con Nipple, and I think he is one of the better players in this draft at this current moment. But if I would have, I almost would want to redo that seventh pick. Like, I think if I was the Pelicans at seven and I had the choice between Con and Carter, like, it would be a really hard decision for me, personally. But I think they would most likely go with Con. But for me, that would be a tough decision.
I feel like like just getting down to it, Khan obviously has a bigger sample size just because of the minutes that he played, and I feel like Khan is definitely the safer bet because one, he's probably up there with shooters in this draft. Arguably, could be the best. I mean, I think he might be the best
One of
shooter.
the best ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I also think there's also a lot to his game because he's shown that he can be a good decision maker on the floor. He's not 6'7" like they tried to say at Duke, but I still think he's got a solid build and frame for a guard his size. I mean, and like you said with Carter, it's like there's definitely, I think he definitely had his moments, but he just didn't really get a chance to kind of show what he can do. Now, if you want somebody who's maybe more athletic, I could see that. But I feel like Khan, just as a shooter and as an offensive player, I think he's the better fit for the Pelicans.
Jake, I think you're on the board here at 11 with the Trailblazers.
Yeah, this one it's a little bit tougher now. I was like I said ready to run to the board for Carter Bryant, and among the top prospects, the only one so far that we've really had kind of slide and not be drafted yet is Kasparis Yakashonis. I don't think he would go here to Portland. They have plenty of guys to play that role, so unfortunately for him, he's going to be kind of that one guy that we see like almost every year that was projected to go pretty high and just based on the teams that are available after him, just continues to slide. So right now, I think we're looking at someone who could be on the wing. Denny Avdia had a really good year. I don't think we necessarily are drafting a starting power forward. The center position is kind of filled up, so I don't think anyone here is really going to come in and be a starter. So we are going to go Liam McNeely or Noah Asenge. I think I'm going to go with Asenge on this one. Bringing in a guy 6'9", long wingspan, another really young player that's got potential. I think him alongside Tamani Kamara, that duo of wings where you'll always have one of them on the floor at all times if his ceiling hits, could be a really interesting fit.
Yeah, I like Asengwe. He's somebody I have to admit, like, puzzles me a lot. Like, sometimes I look at him and I'm like, okay, I can clearly see how this is, like, I can see, like, the really good parts of his game. And then other times I'm like, I really don't know if this is going to work at the next level. He's one of the players I would say I'm most interested in seeing how they're going to translate to the NBA. Where do you guys have him on your board as far as, like, what is this where you guys, like, is this around the range you have him, or do you think Portland would be
I had
just
him.
taking the upside swing here?
I had him late lottery, like early first, but this spot I don't think is like out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I think he's probably mid first round pick to me. And I was trying to figure out because even though he's maybe a little bit lower on the board, I think this Portland team is drafting to fill some kind of scoring wing. I was looking at a guy like Nick Clifford, but I just feel like with that timeline that Portland's on, they don't need to draft a guy that's already 23. I mean, it'd be a nice addition, a guy that's kind of already a proven talent, kind of like what the Lakers did with Dalton Connect, like someone that is older and you kind of know what you're going to get out of him. That just, to me, that doesn't really fit the Trailblazers timeline with guys like Scoot and Shaden Sharp, and even Anthony Simons is like barely older than a guy like Nick Clifford currently. So
All right. Next up, we got the Chicago Bulls. Cameron, what will you be doing?
Okay, so there's a lot of different places I think the Bulls could go. It's tough because I think I have a player that's probably at the top of my board. I just don't know how they would fit with this Chicago team. But I think the team is versatile enough to allow this pick to happen. And I think this is just somebody I'm a really big fan of from seeing their tape. And I think they had a pretty good combine. So I think I'm going to go Cedric Howard here for the Bulls.
I
I
was
just think, all right, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say I was wondering when he was gonna get taken because I feel like he's kind of similar to Carden Bryan, but on like a more extreme level of one. I think he played maybe 6 games this year or something like that, and then shot up very late in the combine. And I saw a tweet that it's like when you do your mock draft and your big boards, it's like the hard part is just figuring out where Coward and Bryan are gonna go because guys who kind of blew up because of the combine process.
Yeah, I think Coward is just someone who, like, he has like all the fundamental tools that you will want from an NBA wing, like extremely long arms, great positional size. And when you go back and watch his tape, like he really does have game. Like he can really, really play. I think his like his development has been really weird because of the injury and stuff like that. I think if he would have played the season, I think this is where he would probably have ended up. I just think the class strength in the middle isn't that great. So I think you'll see people like him and Bryant get taken higher than people who have similar resumes have been taken in other draft classes. Yeah. Well, I have the next pick with the Hawks at. Oh wait, let me make sure.
Yeah,
They still have this pick. Yeah. So the Hawks at 13. They have a couple places I think they could go here. Um, I think the Trae Young question is something that'll kind of perennially be popping up, especially with all the big names on the move this summer, of how long they're going to stick with Trae Young as the force for this franchise. I think they'll probably end up sticking it out another year just because of all the movement that'll be going on this offseason. I just don't know how big his market would be compared to some of the guys at the top of the market. So I think they're pretty good at going. I think their front court could use a little bit of help. I think I'm going to go Thomas Sorber here, just because I know he's somebody who's like a smaller height wise, big, kind of similar to Onyeka Okongwu, but I think his wingspan and just the physicality he plays with make him just a little bit different. So yeah, I will reluctantly take Sorber here. I think this is a little high for. Hold on, actually, no. I'm sorry. Uh, for me, it's too high. I think it's tough. It's tough. I think I'm going to end up instead of going Sorber, I'm going to pick 13. Yeah, I'm going to go instead here with Colin Murray Boyles. I think he's someone that can put more defense around Trae Young. Someone I think that could like play really well off of like other bigs and other defensive players. Just in general, I think he's might be one of the best defenders in the class. His height kind of hurt him a little bit. He didn't come in as tall or as like his combine just wasn't the greatest for his draft stock, but I still think he's a really talented player. And I would just be interested to see how he fits in with the Hawks. So I'll go with Colin Murray Wells here.
yeah, I think that's a good fit. I mean, 6'7" defender. I mean, he came in a little bit undersized, if I remember correctly, from his measurements. But I think just with the tools that he has on the defensive side of the ball, like I think that'll get him some run in the league for sure. Okay, next up we have Jake at pick 14. You'll be picking for the San Antonio Spurs. This is their second pick of the first round. So how will you be following up Dylan Harper?
Yeah, so I drafted Dylan Harper already. We've got plenty of guards. We've got obviously the front court is really well set up with Victor Wembanyama. So here, I think, honestly, we've got plenty of young talent that we are already trying to develop with Stephon Castle and now Dylan Harper. I'm going to take a little bit of a older-ish prospect. I am going to take Nick Clifford here. pretty proven prospect, can play on the wing. If there's any anticipation of a Devin Vassell or a Keldon Johnson trade, I don't think he's going to just completely fill either of those guys' roles individually. But if there is any move like that, then he could fill some of that, what they're doing scoring wise and on the wing for San Antonio. But if they don't trade any of those guys, I think either way, Nick Clifford is going to be like a valuable piece off the bench for them.
Yeah, I think taking him to San Antonio is a good pick. Clifford is a guy who I'm also admittedly probably pretty high on, more so than other prospects in this class, so it's good to see him go to 14. But this next pick for the Thunder, I just want to preface and say that I could easily see both of these picks being packaged. Your pick, Jake, as well as this one that the Thunder have, obviously with all the capital that they have, and I feel like they already have so many guys who just haven't even played. Like they've got Topic. I mean, Usman Jang is kind of on his way out, but also taking Kenrick Williams, AJ Mitchell. Like there's just so many guys who are already drowned on their bench. It's like it's hard to forecast what they would do here. But I think I'm just gonna try to go another guard playmaker, maybe, or a wing playmaker. Um,
Remember, you have to be able to pass, dribble, and shoot. That's all the Thunder players: pass, dribble, shoot.
okay, let me just. I think here. Hmm, I'm not sure. I think I'm trying to decide between Jace Richardson and Ben Seraph, who I feel like they're kind of different as guards, but I think here I'm gonna go Jace Richardson. I don't know if it's necessarily the best fit for him, but I feel like I'm trying to think about what maybe the Thunder would do if they keep this pick, and that's something I could maybe see. Obviously, Yegor Dimon is still on the board, but you know what? I'm gonna change my pick. I'm gonna go Yegor Dimon.
I think this clock that's been ticking down. I think you might have to just forfeit
Yeah,
the pick, bro.
yeah. But I mean, Yegor Dimon, obviously, I think there's a lot of questions about his jumper, but I've kind of become more sold on it than I was when we didn't upload it than when we did our last mock draft. And like I think he's also if he goes to a place like the Thunder, not saying he would play crazy minutes his first year, but I feel like him coming off the bench, he has so many other like if he's running in a unit with Jada, Shea, like they have so many guys who can shift a defense and obviously the way they play, I feel like it would generate a lot of open looks for him and I think he's a guy who I feel better about him being able to hit the standstill jumpers whereas if he's trying to, initiate offense or something like that. I feel like when he's kind of able to shoot more in rhythm, I think that's good for him. And that would generate a lot more looks for him there. And obviously, that's not even talking about the playmaking ability that he has. And I think the Thunder would maybe take him there if he's still on the board.
Yeah, I think I haven't really thought about that, but in a way, it kind of works just because we've seen it work in the past. Like we've seen a player like him and Josh Giddey kind of work in that Thunder system. We also saw like some of the clunkiness that came out of it when you like needed him to be like your bet. Like for a while, Josh Giddey was their second or third option. But now that I think that the Thunder's like hierarchy has kind of been established, like it's firmly Shea, Jada, Chet as the top three guys, and then the rest of the roster just plays like smaller roles. I think that somebody with that skill set can work within the Thunder system, and I think it might actually weirdly be like a perfect fit for Yegor in this area of the draft. So
Yeah, it's one I'm still unsure. And like I said, I could see, I don't want to get lost in trades, but I could see them not even having that pick. But if it were there, I wouldn't be mad if they took Yegor. All right. Next pick, I have the Magic at 16. Um, I think I know what I'm gonna do here. We got Liam McNeely still on the board. I know he's fallen quite a bit over the draft cycle just because I think he missed some time with the sprained ankle. His shot wasn't really showing that he was a shooter. I think he shot like 33%, something like that. But he did also play a little bit out of his, I guess, comfort zone. He was having to initiate a lot. I still think that he can be a great shooter at the next level. He's a big forward as well. And I also think he does have the ability to be a guy who can make the right reads. And I think that, like, just all of those attributes is going to help him have a long career in the NBA. And that's not even getting into the fact that the Magic just need shooters right now. So, I mean, come on. I'm going to take at pick 16, I'm going to take Liam McNeely here.
Okay.
Yeah, I really like this pick. I think Liam is like he's in a position where his stock isn't like really. To me, it doesn't match how good of a player he is. I think that for his entire career, outside of like the 1 year in college where he kind of had to play out of position, he's been like a really good shooter. He's been like one of the best role players in the country. So I think going somewhere like the Magic where you put him back in his right position, really his one job would be to shoot. He really wouldn't have to do much else with Paolo and Franz out there. And the fact that he's also like he kind of fits their mode of like good size for the position and like capable on defense, I think he will work out really well for the Magic.
That's pretty much everyone from that Montford squad, right? We've had Queen go, Cooper Flag was at the top. Now Liam is going in the top 20 as well. This is crazy.
Well, there is one more out there
Yeah.
that should probably be coming
Oh,
up soon.
yeah. Yeah, I forgot about him.
So I am here at 17 for the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are in a pretty interesting spot right now. Currently, as we're recording this, down in the Western Conference Finals. Unfortunately, in my opinion, I wanted to see a Timberwolves Knicks Finals among the 4 teams remaining. Maybe they can make it happen. I don't know about that though. But the Timberwolves here, I think at this point, they're not necessarily drafting for fit. This is already a team that, as currently constructed, has gone about as close to the NBA Finals as you can. So I think someone that's clearly standing out on the board among who's remaining is Kasparas Yakachonis. I don't think he's going to be here at 17, realistically. Obviously, they just took Rob Dillingham last year, but he hasn't really played for them. And I think some of that has to do with his playmaking, and they're not really trusting it. And I think that's one of Kasparas' strengths is getting the ball in the right hands for everyone, getting good shots. So I really don't see how you could pass up on a guy that probably is a top 10 talent seen around in the consensus mock drafts here at almost 20.
Casper's, I feel like the Timberwolves might stray away from this because I think if they take another guard, it kind of feels like they really messed up last year's draft by trading away future picks to go up and get Rob. I do understand like Rob's not playing. I just also don't know if Casper's would play just because it feels like Finch like only plays like defensive players. Like he tries to not really play. I don't know. What do you guys think about Casper's
I mean,
defense? Do you guys think he would be able to play?
I do kind of agree with what you're saying because we're literally seeing it happen right now in the conference finals with Terrence Shannon Jr. And like, I get the drafting a guard is kind of more of a like in this situation would be more of a long term thing, but like you said, they have Dillingham, and like I don't think it's a bad pick necessarily, but I feel like you have Dillingham and you're kind of banking on him to be a long term contributor, I guess. And
Yeah.
even though they did want him to come in and play right away, but I still think that they're. I mean, obviously they drafted Dillingham with they traded up to draft Dillingham, so it's been a year, but I still feel like they hold him in a high regard, even if he hasn't been playing a whole lot. So
Yeah. I mean, on the other end of it though, they do need more people who can like make plays with the ball in their hands. Like they need more people who can like break down the defense. That way you don't have to rely solely on Ant to create plays for other people. But I'll just I like this pick like value wise. Like I think he's a really good player. I just wonder if he would run into like kind of the same trap as Rob is like until you learn how to like really, really guard and not turn the ball over. I just don't know if Finch would play a guard like that. But also, at some point, he's probably going to be forced to because I really don't know how long Mike Conley has left.
I would just like to point out when I made the Thunder pick, I still think I'd rock with Yegor in that situation, but I completely didn't even realize he was still on the board. Because I remember I said I'm looking at Jace Richardson and Ben Seraph, not even realizing because I was on Fanspo and like I had scrolled like kind of to the middle, not even seeing he was still at the very top. So I just want to give Kasparis his respect. No, I'm not overlooking him, even though I did. Okay, with that being said, now we're on to the next pick with the Washington Wizards. Cameron, I believe this is your pick. Yep, yeah, the Washington Wizards at pick 18.
Okay, so at pick 18, well, early in the draft at pick 6, we took Derek Queen for the Wizards. So I think that kind of shores up their front court. It's hard because they have like a ton of young players that actually play for them. Like they still have Bub Carrington from last year, Kaishan George, who both show promise. They traded for AJ Johnson. He looks like he could be a diamond in the rough. So they have a lot of young guys. I'm trying to think of what else they really need. I think overall their defense has just not been up to par, if I'm going to be honest. And I think I want to take somebody to help that end of the floor. Now, who do I necessarily want that to be here is kind of tough. I actually think I'm going to go with Rasheer Fleming because I think one day he'll be a good like defender. I think he has all the tools to be like a really effective defender. He has really long arms. He has really good positional size. And although I have some questions about how good he processes the game, I think that they just overall they need more defenders. And I think he's someone that could be pretty versatile playing like a 4, sometimes small ball 5 guy for them. So I think especially if he can transfer his shooting ability from college, I think this would be a great pick here for them. So here at 19 with Brooklyn, this is their second pick. We had them take Jeremiah Fears earlier in the draft. I think I want to go Asa Noel here. I think they have some decisions to make with their front court plays, and a couple of those guys could possibly be on the move this offseason. I think this is a good start to rebuilding that unit, and I think they probably need another guard, but I think there will be some pretty good guards at their later picks in the draft. So I think that's probably the best value pick for them here is Asa Noel.
At pick 20, we got the Miami Heat. Jake, how will you be helping the Jimmy Butlerless Heat culture?
Yeah, this is someone that had been deliberated on for an earlier pick and was not selected, and he's still standing out on the board. We are going to take Jace Richardson. I believe he's still available, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jace Richardson here in Miami. I think that's a pretty interesting fit. He's not the biggest guard. He's a little bit skinny, he's not going to like blow you away with his height or anything. But we saw it this year at Michigan State. He's a very capable scorer. He can get in the lane. And I think here in Miami alongside Tyler Hero, that could be a pretty cool dynamic duo.
All right. So with the 21st pick, I have the Utah Jazz. I think here, again, like the Jazz are just not in a great situation. And like they're in another spot where it's like they have so many young players already. And it's like, I don't really want to add more to that necessarily if they're not going to be. I don't know who I want to go. Okay, I have the 21st pick, and I think here I'm just gonna take a complete shot. And this is also partially just me kind of in my head envisioning some madness, and I'm gonna go Danny Wolf here for the Utah Jazz. Again, I think it's kind of a interesting fit, but I think the Jazz they already have kind of their center who can be a rim protector in Walker Kessler. They have Lowry Markkinen, who's kind of another big for them, but he's a guy who I think and around the league he just appears to be on the market, and there's a very real chance he could be gone. Maybe not this offseason, but in the near future for sure. And I think Danny Wolf, for him, I think he's definitely a very interesting player, and pro- projecting him is definitely kind of tough. But for a place like Utah, I think he can be kind of another playmaker slash. If they really wanted to try it, they could try the pick and roll initiating like they did at Michigan. But I think here it's like they're a team that's already got so many young players and they're experimenting. If they keep this pick, let's go Danny Wolf and kind of add to that.
You think they will play him with Flip on the bench, or do you think like
I think so. Just because unless they're just like, hey man, let's just go out there offense only. There's gonna be I'm not saying Danny Wolf is like a horrible defender per se, but
yeah, because him and Kyle Filipowski off the bench,
like it's gonna be tough. I don't
yeah, man, yeah, he'll be able to score. It'll be
I could have went
interesting on offense.
I'm a rock with it. I'm not gonna switch up. But yeah. Alright, next up I have the 27th pick. Or I'm ahead of myself.
22nd.
22nd. The Atlanta Hawks.
I went Tyler Morey them at 13 earlier.
Mm, I'm like, do we go? I think this is where I'm gonna take Thomas Sorber. Um yeah. I think I'm gonna let it rock here. I mean, I know they've already kind of got a crowded front court, but bro, this is kind of annoying me because I feel like I'm making these picks and I just can't make up my mind. But I think here I'm gonna just let it rock again. Sorber. I mean, some people may think he may not even go in the first round, but I think I think he's still a first round talent. And like, sure, he had injury problems, but he was a productive big man his first year. He's versatile. Like, I think I'm gonna just go him here.
Okay. Jake, I think you're next with Indiana at 23.
Yeah, the Pacers are another really interesting spot late in this draft. We are seeing them go deep in the playoffs again. They look like one of the most complete teams in the entire NBA. They're 1 through 5 very strong, and their bench is just insanely good. There's guys on the bench that are not even really getting that many minutes in the playoffs that I think are super valuable. Um, like a guy like Jarris Walker, I think still has a really bright future, and he hasn't even really been called upon to do very much for them in this playoff run. So I think here it's just going to be about adding another capable guy that in the playoffs, um, if they just need him for even 5, 6 minutes, could be someone that you know going into it that he's going to make the right play. It's going to seem kind of crazy because they already have 3 guys in a role as a kind of point guard. I'm going to take Walter Clayton Jr. for the Pacers. I think with TJ McConnell, he's not very young anymore. Andrew Nemhard, who knows what future teams might offer him as a free agent if they want to snag him. I think Walter Clayton is a capable vet that's just going to add to the winning caliber of Indiana.
Yeah, he definitely fits like the archetype they like at the guard spot, like really creative guards. So, I mean, I can see that. I just wonder if they go big man too, though, because I think Turner's deal is up, and I'm overall just interested in see what they're going to do with Turner's deal. Just I feel like you've gone this far, you kind of have to pay him,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
Well, also there's no way they're trying to replace Miles Turner at pick 23. There's
yeah,
no
definitely
one that's
not.
going to be that valuable.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting what they do there. I think I'm up next with the Thunder at 24. We went Yegor Demon with them earlier. I don't think this guy that I'm going to take here is going to be here, just because like it's kind of been reported his floor is a little bit higher than this. But I mean, I could see if he does make it here, I could see the Thunder jumping on this just because Hartenstein is probably like he looks to be like probably going to be the odd man out down the line, just with the amount of contract trouble they're going to run into and how expensive this roster is going to get. So I think maybe jumping ahead of that problem. See, here's the thing though, because I'm trying to choose between two players here. I think they just try to replace the role, even though I think Maxime Renaud is somebody who's like a lot of he had a really really good combine, and I think he kind of fits a lot of what the Thunder like. However, I think Juan or Baron J is probably more in the Hardenstein role, and I think Chet kind of has like the stretch big man coverage for the Thunder. So just to continue with kind of this roster construction, I think I'm gonna go Baron J here,
all right.
and then I'm back up again with the Magic at 25. Jake, you stole my pick. It was definitely gonna be Walter Clayton if he was still here, but since he's gone, I think the most important thing for them is to add spacing on the court for Paolo and Franz. We took Liam McNeely for them earlier. I think I'm going to take. Let me double check. I would like to take a point guard just because I feel like that could maybe be a position of need for them looking forward as like they have moves to make in the future, but I don't really see the fit roster wise. Like I don't think there's any guys who like shoot at a high enough clip to take here. So I'm gonna take somebody who can go on real hot streaks as a shooter and is someone that I think I had like really, really high on my board coming into the year. So here I'm gonna take Will Riley at 25.
Like it.
All right, Jake, you're up at pick 26 with the Brooklyn Nets.
Man. The Brooklyn Nets, another first round pick. We've already taken Jeremiah Fears, and who else was it here? It was Asen Newell is joining this Brooklyn team as well earlier on at pick 19. I think right here, we've been talking about it with Brooklyn. They're just acquiring young talent, see who can kind of rise to the top at this point, and someone who still has, I think, pretty high potential and just has really fallen down the draft stock board since going into this draft process is going to be Nolan Traore coming in at 26. That's a lot lower than we had in the preseason. He was a guy that a lot of people had top 10, even close to the top 5 in this draft. Had a bit of a rough stretch overseas. I think he actually finished the year a little bit better than what he was doing earlier on in the season. So for Brooklyn, getting a guy that less than a year ago was seen as a top 10 pick at 26, I think is pretty good value.
And with that being said, I have the 27th pick, which is also to the Brooklyn Nets. So we'll see how.
There's no way they use all these, right? Like there's just
Yeah.
absolutely no way they use all these.
But assuming they do, we already took 2 guards as well as Asa Newell. I think here, I'm going to go a forward or big. But I think I'm going to just take Maxime Renaud here. Um, like I said, I just didn't really want to draft another guard forward, but he's also kind of another guy who he's had good showings as of late or since the combine. And I think he's a big man who can go out there, produce. has really good size. Um, and the Nets, I think, kind of just they're in a very similar range. They're approaching very similar range to the Jazz, where if they keep all these picks, they're just going to have a bunch of random young picks. But I mean, I think for Raynaud, he's a good center. Nick Claxton, I don't know if he's if is he entering free agency this year?
Um, okay. I want to say I don't think he. I'm pretty sure he's not a free agent, but his name has been like constantly in trade rumors.
Well, I think
Okay, let's see. Okay, so yeah, Nick Claxton is yeah, he's on the books for a few more years here as he'll sign through the 27-28 season.
okay. For some reason, I thought he was going to be going into free agency, but I still think Raynaud's a good pick here. I mean, he's not the same player as Claxton is in terms of being a big man, but he can space the floor out a little bit, crash the glass, get rebounds. I think he's a big who can be valuable long term. So I think I'm gonna go Raynaud here for the Nets. Then next up, oh my gosh, I have the Boston Celtics. Okay, let's see here.
I feel like this pick has very quickly become a pretty interesting one late in this first round with the Tatum injury. What do they want to go here? Is it someone who they're hoping can contribute right away, or is this gonna be just like some young guy?
If I have to guess, I think they'll go like some type of younger, like I think they're gonna go a guard here, just because I think they're gonna have like some real conversations about who they move in that backcourt this year. Like I think they're gonna really try hard to move off of Drew or Derek or possibly even Jalen. So I think they'll probably need somebody to be in the backcourt by this part in the offseason. I just don't know which archetype will be missing from their current roster.
Mhm. Tankathon has Ben Seraph here, but I,
Seraph is still available. Gonzalez is still available.
yeah. Um, am I crazy if I go Tahad Pettiford? I know like he's not expected to go first round, and like they already have Peyton Pritchard, who's kind of a smaller guard, and but I don't know why, but I could see Missoula. Like obviously he's not the sole guy making these decisions. Like it's typically the GM, and then, but I wouldn't be shocked if Missoula's like, I like the heart that he plays with. I like those guys, and then he just takes Todd Pettiford with the 28th pick, and I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility. Um,
It's
yeah,
just hard because he's so small.
yeah, and like I said, they already have Pritchard, who's another small guard, but and it's interesting too because we didn't really see Tahad and I don't think in the NBA he's ever going to be in that situation really, but we didn't really see him in a situation where he had to, I guess, kind of do it all himself, kind of like Fears. It's like he had talent around him, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because sure, like maybe in the NBA he's not always going to be on the best team, but I think when he's thriving around other guys and taking the space that they give him or taking the advantage that his teammates around him create, I think that could make him, a very valuable player. So I think I'm gonna go Pettiford there. All right, Jake, you're up for the Phoenix Suns. Who, man, if you're a Suns fan, I feel bad for you. I'm not gonna go too on about the struggles they've had. 2021 in the finals, went to getting Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal blowing up that core, and now it's like it just seems like they're in a hole they can't get out of. But Jake, what would you do here to try and get things moving in a positive direction?
Yeah, there's a few guys I'm kind of looking at that are still available. I think just with this Phoenix Suns timeline, yeah, with everybody being so late into their career, you might think this is the spot where you go a young guy, but I just feel like at 29, the chances of you hitting on one of the few young players at this point in the draft is not very high. So I think here you're taking someone that could come in and contribute something, even if it's off the bench. I'm going to go Ryan Kalkbrenner here. Provide a lot of defense inside. We saw him for a long time with the Creighton Blue Jays be one of the best defenders in the country. So hopefully he can come in and provide some minutes as a big man and maybe block some shots, help some of their interior defense for 15, 20 minutes a game maybe.
So before I pick for the Clippers with the last pick in the draft, I'll go over some of the guys that are still left out there. We have Ben Serif, Hugo Gonzalez, Janai Broom, LeBron Feiline, Cam Jones is still on the board. You got guys like Noah Penda. Hansen Yang had an interest. Hansen Yang is an interesting prospect. Dink Pate is still on the board. Hunter Salas. Those are kind of the guys that are like in and around this area that are still available. I think here for the Clippers, they don't need a lot. I mean, I think they'll probably go. I think Phylon is a first round pick. I just don't know how he fits with this Clippers roster. So like I would go Phylon, but I just don't know how he fits with this roster. So I think I'm gonna end up going. I don't know. I'm stuck between Phylon, Serif, and Gonzalez. I think out of those guys, I'll just go Serif just because I think he's probably the lowest probability of still being around in the second round. So I think for the Clippers, I'll go with Ben Serif.
All right. That concludes our mock draft for the day. We just did the first round, first 30 picks. Obviously, we still got some time before the draft happens and things could change. Trades could happen. Although I think the trades would just happen on draft day. But I think, in my opinion, I feel like this isn't really a bad mock draft. There were a few things that, looking back on it, I maybe would change, but I feel like every year we do this, it's like I look at somebody and I'm like, I would change that pick, but this year I'm not like too. I feel like we did have some guys who maybe fell a little bit further than they probably will, like Serif, as Cameron just mentioned. I think also Traore. I'm not too sure how scouts and executives feel about him at this point. Obviously, he was very high in the season, but that's another name I feel like that'll probably go somewhat earlier. Kasparis also falling to 17, I feel like is kind of not what I expected coming into this.
I feel like there'd be a team to trade up for him. If he's falling behind top 10, some team would move up to like 12, 13.
Yeah, I could see that as well.
Yeah, I think you're going to see I think it's something I'm noticing just like watching a lot of mock drafts. I think if the order stays largely the same and we don't see any trades in that middle part, I think you can see like some guard prospects kind of dropping a little further just because a lot of the teams in the middle of the draft kind of don't need point guards. Like a lot of teams have 3 to 4 guards in their room that they really trust at the moment. So I don't think it's necessarily an indictment on like our evaluation of guys like Traore or Kasparis. I just think like some of the teams in the middle just kind of don't need guards. And I could also think like, well, you guys said like you guys could see people trading up there. I could also see like some teams kind of just staying pat and seeing how long the guard slide will go, just depending on how big the teams feel the difference is between guys like Kasparis or Yegor, or the difference between a Walter Clayton and Nolan Traore. Like, would a team actually trade up to the middle of the first round to go get one of those guys, or can they feel like they'll get the other one at their pick already?
I think the tough thing is for trades this year, like most draft trades are either for players or for future picks. And I feel like outside of maybe the top 5 or 6, I would be very surprised if a team trades their next year's first round pick for somebody in the middle of the first round in this class. Just with how highly anticipated the 26 class is right now, I think moving that pick for somebody in this class would probably be seen as a questionable move.